This little talk is designed to introduce you to some of the file storage characteristics of just about any computer. Some computers and some versions of Windows make it easier to see this than others. Macintosh makes things kind of easy for you, so easy in fact that sometimes this organization is obscured. But right now I'm going to demonstrate this on Windows XP, so this will apply generally to all computers, all information storage arrangements. The specifics may vary a bit. What you're looking at here is my home page. I happen to put up some wallpaper that I got from the National Geographic free on the web. Very colorful, and of course these icons access programs. I'm going to go into what's called My Computer. This is like the Finder on a Mac, although the appearance comes up somewhat different. What we have here is hardware, that is, the disk drive, drive C, is typically the main drive on a computer like this. Other drives with other letters may be set up. These removable drives would be either plug-in USB storage or perhaps CD-ROM or DVDs. C on Windows PCs is the default hard disk. Most machines have one hard disk. It's labeled C. Now you notice something happened before. When I put the cursor over this, it gives me a little reading on how much space is on this disk, 117 gigabytes here, and free space 23 gigabytes. Generally, on Windows machines, I can right mouse click on these and go to Properties, and I'll see more, a little picture about how much of the disk with this pie chart. The purple here is what's free space. If this gets too filled up, I'm going to have a problem working with this machine. It's going to slow down. If this fills up, you have a choice. You can delete things, or you can copy some of what's blue here, some of these files that I'll show you in a second. You could copy to some other storage device, perhaps an external hard drive or a flash drive. I'm going to double click on C. What you're looking at now is the directory, that is the list of all the folders in C, and if there are any freestanding files in C, you'll see them as well. Freestanding files would be kind of a mistake here. It's kind of bad organization, but they've sort of crept up on me because I've had this machine for a couple of years. You'll notice I have a lot of folders. It's a good idea to create folders by subject matter and put files in them. Certainly if I was a student in college these days, I would create a folder for a course, and everything to do with that course I would put into that folder. Then I could back that folder up later as an entire folder because I can copy these folders. I can highlight one and right mouse click and say copy, and then I could find another drive. Say I plugged in a USB drive in one of these. I could click on it and then say paste, right mouse click and paste, and I would copy that off to the backup device. What I'm going to do right now though is to double click on a folder named Art, and in here I created a folder within this folder named Art, and I've called it National Geographic. And I downloaded a bunch of pictures from the National Geographic website that's indicated on the page in which you found this link. This is just free wallpaper, that is decoration for your computers. Very nice pictures, very colorful. I downloaded a bunch of them, and I'm going to use them as kind of an example. There's a dozen of them here. I named them when I downloaded them so that I could tell what they were. Sometimes files that you download would have very complicated names, and it doesn't make much sense to perpetuate those because you can't recognize the picture. Here are some simple names. You'll notice the sizes of these vary in terms of the amount of storage space they're taking. That's because, in fact, the way that these pictures are stored, even if the picture is the same physical size, let's say 8 by 10, the composition of the picture and the colors and the detail will dictate how much storage space is taken. If I hold my cursor over one of these, though, you'll see here dimensions 1280 by 1040. The 1280 is the wide dimension, that's the width. That's 1,280 picture elements, little color dots. That's how many columns we have in terms of these dots. The 1024 is the number of rows. If you multiply those, 1280 times 1024, you'll come up with a large number. That is the number of dots making up the picture. My screen here is 1024 by 768. That's a pretty common size. If you did a little division, you'd see that it's 4 units wide and 3 units tall. 4 by 3 is the traditional proportions of a television screen and a monitor. Nowadays we have wider screens on most computers because they're intended to play high-definition video as well. If I put my cursor here, I'm going to see the first picture, 1280 by 1024. The next one, 1600 by 1200. It's actually bigger. This one, 1600 by 1200. This one, 989 by 742, a very unusual size. Here's another one, 989 by 742. Somebody must really like that strange size. Another one like that, kind of small, 1600 by 1200, and you get the picture. These are different sizes. If I right mouse click on one of these, and I go to Preview, this is a feature of Windows XP. I can now see the pictures. If they're bigger than the screen, it will reduce them to the size of the screen. But if they're smaller than the screen, it won't expand them. They would get fuzzy. So here we have a friendly shark. Looks like his nose has been kind of damaged. He seems to have some problem with his gums. I don't think I'd like to encounter this creature. I'm going to press the right arrow key, and this particular preview feature in Windows XP will show me the next picture. These are all very colorful pictures. I happen to take some here from the website that had to do with sea life, and then some scenery. And here's some other scenery in Baja California. Very nice blue with just a real splash of intense red here with these kayakers. Here's an aerial photo of someplace up in probably Alaska where looks like there's some ice close to the shore or some sort of a meandering stream that's flowing into it. Here's a friendly little hare. Well, it's not a hare at all. It's a red squirrel. With the ears like that, it's kind of surprising. In any case, he's looking at us. Here's an anemone. Looks like a plant, but it's actually an animal. Here are the hares, 2 hares. And they're sort of communicating, I guess. Now here's another scene, but you'll notice this picture is smaller. This is one of those pictures that has one of the unusual dimensions. It's probably still a 4 by 3 picture, maybe not in terms of proportions, but a few pictures in here of that size. Here's camping out in some natural formation. Very nice composition of this picture. Here's another picture up in Alaska, Denali. And we're back to the shark. I'm going to get out of the preview. What I wanted to show you with this was these picture sizes are rather excessive, especially this one here, this anemone. That's a lot of space. That's 1 megabyte of picture. If we put that into a website, first of all, it would be too large for the screen, and so it would be very awkward. Even if we used HTML commands to reduce it, we would still have to worry about this huge size being transmitted down to the screen. We'd like to arrange websites to have fairly fast response time, and it's not going to be fast if we load it down with pictures that are too big. We don't want to send a big picture and then with software reduce it on the receiving end to some small size. We would like to have all of these be a small size and perhaps a standard size. Now there is a program you can download for Windows XP, and similar programs may exist, or a similar function may exist in the Mac. You might want to explore that. First of all, let me mark all of these files. There's a couple of ways that I can do that. I can click on one, hold the Shift key down, click on another, and the whole range in between gets marked. Or I could just hold my left mouse key down and do this, and they're marked again. What I want to do, though, is to mark them and right mouse click and go to resize. Now, you may not have a resize function. This appears if you download a program from Microsoft and install it. And I show you in the page that refers to this video what the name of that site is. You can download, these are called little power tools for Windows. This particular one is very handy. What it's going to do when I click it is to let me decide what standard smaller size all of these pictures should be turned into for various purposes. And I'm going to go for a very small one here because these are each too large for the purpose I have in mind. We're going to put a couple of pictures on a web page and to develop a few web pages so that we can play with HTML as you might come up with a website. I'm going to go for the smallest size here, 240 pixels. That's tall by 320 wide. So if I click this and I click OK, it does its work, and you'll notice still highlighted are the originals, but now there are files of similar names with this WinCE, some name here that they thought this picture size would be very good for, something in the way of a small handheld device. So these files coexist, arches here at a small size, arches here at a tall size. Here, they happen to be in descending order, or perhaps no order actually. Here they're in alphabetical order coming down. I can, if I want to, click here and put them all into alphabetical order. And you see when I do that, what happens is then the two arches come together. Let's do this. I'm going to right mouse click here and do preview. And you're going to see pairs of pictures. Here's the small one. There was the larger version of it. Here's the small one of that. There was the larger version, even larger. Here's a small one and its larger version. The small one, the larger. You see, the small ones are all pretty much the same size. The only difference would be that if the original had a different proportion, height and width, it might come up a slightly different shape. But this program will try and make all of these pictures into pictures of a standard size, and that's very handy for us. They don't necessarily store in the same amount of space. Look here, you'll still see a terrific variation. Now, if I click on size, it will sort them either ascending in size or descending in size. And I do get sort of a grouping out of this because what happens here is the very smallest of these are going to be the ones that have been resized. In fact, these are the ones that have been resized, and you see they're all rather small. They still have a variation in physical size, but in terms of the size of them, if I now do a preview, you'll see they all are just about the same size. There may be one or two that's slightly less tall. That one's a little taller because its proportions were different. But these are all close enough and small enough that they would be efficient for our purposes in working with HTML. So we're going to use these in another video in forming some HTML and developing a website that has a little bit of a menu and branches to other web pages. This is going to be your introduction to HTML in Unit 4. And in that unit, it will be some of these pictures that we're going to be including. However, I will rename them slightly for that purpose so we don't have this awkward parenthesis. It would just be better for our purposes if we stick to very simple kinds of rules for the formation of these names. For example, here I'm going to get rid of these original files, and I won't delete them. What I'm going to do is this. I'm going to right mouse click and say New Folder, and I'll name that Original Pics. And it's a folder. You see that kind of an icon there. Now I'm going to mark all of these, the original ones, and I'm going to, with my left mouse button, move down here until this one lights up, and then let up on the mouse button. What I just did was to put all of those original pictures in here. Now I have only the copies of pictures here, and this could have the same name as a file in here without any problem. It might be nicer if I name it somewhat differently, but right now I'm going to do a rename, and I'm just going to do the rename to get rid of that extra word in parenthesis in every one of these. That means when we work with these in HTML, we're going to have an easier time of dealing with them. In fact, what I'm going to have to do is to put these somewhere on the web, and I'm going to put them at a website that I maintain simply to have continuity between terms. It is on a server that I pay a little bit of money for to have some space on it. There are probably free places you might investigate to do this if you wanted to do it on the web. I use an outsourcer that is an ISP, an internet service provider, that happens to be located somewhere on the West Coast. But that's of no consequence because the web actually makes everything close by in terms of connectivity. So what I'm going to do here, you see me renaming these things, and I don't have any problem, even though these are the same names, as the original file names, which are now stored in that separate folder. Let me just finish this process. I will take care of that on my own, and you will see these names of pictures that we're going to be using in HTML.